Hello, my name is Daryl Weilberg. I am a Jehovah's Witness in good standing. Or if you prefer, I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses in good standing. Either is grammatically correct. Now this video, it's not approved by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York or the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. It's not approved by those 9 faithful, loving, dear, kind, caring individual who take the lead over the Jehovah's Witnesses, 8.6 million Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the earth. And it's not approved by any local body of elders. See, I don't work for the local body of elders. I don't work for the Faithful and Discreet Slave, and I don't work for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Pennsylvania, New York, doesn't matter. I work for Jesus Christ. All 8.6 million Jehovah's Witnesses work for Jesus Christ. We don't work for any men. Okay, I wish the apostates would get that out of their head. They keep saying the Watchtower this and the Watchtower that. The Watchtower is just a legal entity required by the government for any religious organization to collect donations. They have to report that to the government. It's just that simple. It's just a legal entity required by the government. It doesn't go against the Bible, so the brothers, we adapted it. And that's our legal representation there. Today, I wanted to redo the video on hell. Perhaps you can relate to this. Did anyone ever tell you when you were younger that you're going to go to hell if you don't behave? Do you tell your kids that today? Please don't. Please don't tell your kids that. Because this is what hell actually means. Now we're going to consider that. Hell is a word used in the King James Version as well as in the Catholic Dewey Version and most older translations to transliterate the Hebrew word Sheol and the Greek Hades. In the King James Version, the word hell is rendered from Sheol 31 times. In other words, wherever Sheol appeared in the original or the earliest manuscripts, they put hell there. And from Hades 10 times. This version is not very consistent. However, since Sheol is also translated 31 times grave and 3 times pit, you can see where the confusion comes in. In the Dewey Version, Sheol is rendered hell 64 times, pit once, and death once. That means where you see where the transliterators or translators saw the word Sheol, they put death once, pit, grave. In 1885, with the publication of the Complete English Revised Version, the original word Sheol was in many places transliterated into the English text of the Hebrew Scriptures. Though in most occurrences grave and pit were used, and hell is found some 14 times, this was a point on which the American Committee disagreed with the British revisers. And so, when producing the American Standard Version of 1901, they transliterated Sheol in all 65 of its appearances. They didn't say hell or grave or pit, they just said Sheol. Now both versions transliterated Hades in the Christian Greek scriptures, or what you refer to as the New Testament, and all 10 of its occurrences. Though the Greek word Gehenna, English Gehenna, is rendered hell throughout, as is true of many other modern translations. Concerning this use of hell to translate these original words from the Hebrew and Greek, Vine's Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testaments, 1981, Volume 2, pages 187, says this about Hades. It corresponds to Sheol in the Old Testament. and the American Revised of the OT, Old Testament and New Testament. New Testament, it has been unhappily rendered hell. Collier's Encyclopedia, volume of 1986, volume 12, page 28, I think. Yeah, 28, says concerning hell. First, it stands for the Hebrew Sheol of the Old Testament and the Greek Hades of the Septuagint or the New Testament. Since Sheol in Old Testament times referred simply to the abode of the dead and suggested no moral distinctions, the word hell as understood today is not a happy translation. It is, in fact, because of the way the word hell is understood today, that it is such an unsatisfactory translation of these original Bible words. If you were to consider the word hell as a torture place where people are burned forever because they disagree with Jehovah God, that would make Jehovah God a sadist. And we know Jehovah God is no sadist. Webster's Third New International Dictionary, unabridged, under the word hell says this. The word hell derives from Helen, H-E-L-A-N, to conceal. The word hell thus originally conveyed no thought of heat or torment, but simply of a covered over or concealed place. In the Old English dialect, the expression helling potatoes meant not to roast them, but simply to place the potatoes in the ground or in the cellar. That's right, Old English, helling potatoes meant to place them in a cellar or in the ground. Isn't that weird? It's not a place of hellfire. The meaning given today to the word hell is that portrayed in Dante's Divine Comedy and Milton's Paradise Lost, which meaning is completely foreign to the original definition of the word. The idea of a hell of fiery torment, however, dates back long before Dante or Milton. The Grolier Encyclopedia, 1971, volume 9, page 205, under hell says this. Hindus and Buddhists regard hell as a place of spiritual cleansing and final restoration. Islamic tradition considered it as a place of everlasting punishment, just like Christendom does. The idea of suffering after death is found among the pagan religious teachings of ancient peoples in Babylon and Egypt. Babylonian and Assyrian beliefs depicted the netherworld as a place full of horrors presided over by gods and demons of great strength and fierceness. Although ancient Egyptian religious texts do not teach that the burning of any individual victim would go on forever, they do portray the other world as featuring pits of fire for the damned. The Religion of Babylonia and Assyria by Morris Jastrow, Jr., 1898, page 581, said this. The Book of the Dead, with introduction by E. Willis Budge, 1960, pages 135, 144, 149, 151, 153, 161, and 2000, page 2000. Hellfire has been a basic teaching in Christendom for many centuries. It is understandable why the Encyclopedia Americana, 1956, volume 14, page 81, said this. Much confusion and misunderstanding has been caused by the early translators of the Bible persistently rendering the Hebrew Sheol and the Greek Hades and Gehenna by the word hell. The simple transliteration of these words by the translators of the revised editions of the Bible has not sufficed to appreciably clear up this confusion and misconception. Nevertheless, such transliteration and consistent rendering does enable the Bible student to make an accurate comparison of the text in which these original words appear, and with an open mind thereby to arrive at a correct understanding of their significance. So Gehenna, grave, Hades, Sheol, and Tartarus are different words, and only two of those words are different, and that's Gehenna and Tartarus. We're going to go through Gehenna right now, but Tartarus is where the angels were placed, and it's not a literal place, it's spiritual imprisonment. They can't get anything. They're in darkness, where grave, Hades, and Sheol are all the same. Gehenna. Now, Gehenna comes from the verb, the Hebrew Gehenna, Valley of Hinnom. This name appears 12 times in the Christian Greek scriptures, which you call the New Testament. And whereas many translators take the liberty to render it by the word hell, a number of modern translations transliterate the word from the Greek Gehenna, Matthew 5:22. The deep, narrow valley of Hinnom, later known by this Greek name, lay to the south and southwest of ancient Jerusalem, and is the modern-day Wadi Rababi, or Gehenna. Joshua 15:8, 18:16, Jeremiah 19:2, and verse 6. Judean kings Ahaz and Manasseh engaged in idolatrous worship, which included the making of human sacrifices by fire to Baal. 2 Chronicles 28:1, 3, 33:1, and 6, and Jeremiah 7:31, 32, and Jeremiah 32:35. Later, to prevent such activities there in the future, faithful King Josiah had those places of idolatrous worship polluted, and he had them destroyed. He brought them all down. 2 Kings 23:10. No symbol of everlasting torment. Jesus Christ associated fire with Gehenna in Matthew 5:22, Matthew 18:9, Mark 9:47 and 48, as did the disciple James. He was the only other biblical writer besides Matthew, Mark, and Luke to use the word Gehenna, James 3:6. Some commentators endeavor to link such fiery characteristics of Gehenna with the burning of human sacrifices that was carried on prior to Josiah's reign, actually his grandfather Manasseh, and on this basis hold that Gehenna was used by Jesus as a symbol of everlasting torment. However, since Jehovah God expressed repugnance for such practice, and he said this about sacrificing humans to fire, a thing that I had not commanded, and that had not come up into my heart, Jeremiah 7:31, Jeremiah 32:35. It seems most unlikely that God's Son, in discussing divine judgment, would make such idolatrous practice the basis for the symbolic meaning of Gehenna. It may be noted that God prophetically decreed that the Valley of Hinnom would serve as a place for mass disposal of dead bodies, rather than for the torture of live victims. Jeremiah 7:32-33, Jeremiah 19:2 and 6, verse 7, verse 10, and verse 11. Thus, at Jeremiah 31:40, the reference to the low plain of the carcasses and of the fatty ashes is generally accepted as designating the Valley of Hinnom, and a gate known as the Gate of the Ash Heaps, evidently opened out into the eastern extremity of the valley at its juncture with the ravine of the Kidron, Nehemiah 3:13 and 14. Therefore, the biblical evidence concerning Gehenna generally parallels the traditional view presented by rabbinic and other sources. That view is that the Valley of Hinnom was used as a place for the disposal of waste matter from the city of Jerusalem. Matthew 5:30 calls it a rubbish heap. Refers to Gehenna as the rubbish heap. Concerning Gehenna, the Jewish commentator David Kemhai, around 1160 to 1235, in his comment on Psalm 27:13, gives the following historical information. And it is a place in the land, this is what he says now, and it is a place in the land adjoining Jerusalem, and it is a loathsome place, and they throw there unclean things and carcasses, no live things. Also, there was a continual fire there to burn the unclean things and the bones of the carcasses. Hence, the judgment of the wicked ones is called parabolically Gehenna, because it's symbolic of a complete destruction. It is evident that Jesus used Gehenna as a representative of utter destruction, resulting from adverse judgments by God. Hence, with no resurrection to life as a soul being possible. Matthew 10:28, Luke 12:4 and 5. Now, the scribes and the Pharisees, as a wicked class, were denounced as subjects for Gehenna by Jesus. Matthew 23:13 through 15 and verse 33. To avoid such destruction, Jesus' followers were to get rid of anything causing spiritual stumbling, the cutting off of a hand and the tearing out of an eye, figuratively representing their deadening of those body members with reference to sin. In other words, all those body members meant don't do this sin, don't do that sin. It doesn't matter the particular sin, just do not sin. Do not practice sin. We all sin, but and you find that in Matthew 18:9, Mark 9:43 through 47, Colossians 3:5, and you can compare all those with Matthew 5:27 through 30. Now, Jesus also apparently alluded to Isaiah 66:24 in describing Gehenna as a place where their maggot does not die and the fire is not put out. That's in Mark 9:47 and 48. That the symbolic picture here is not one of torture, but rather of complete destruction, is evident from the fact that the Isaiah text dealt not with persons who were alive, but with the carcasses of men that were transgressing against God, the sinners. The two evildoers that were executed on the stakes next to Jesus were both thrown into that valley of Hinnom after they were described as dead, found out to be dead. If, as the available evidence indicates, the Valley of Hinnom was a place for the disposal of garbage and carcasses, fire perhaps increased in intensity by the addition of sulfur, compare Isaiah 30:33, would be the only suitable means to eliminate such refuge. Where the fire did not reach worms or maggots, would breed consuming anything not destroyed by the fire. And then you would have the problem with diseases and what have you, if they didn't leave this fire burning. On this basis, Jesus' words would mean that the destructive effect of God's adverse judgment would not cease until complete destruction was attained. Gehenna, complete destruction. That's why hell in Revelation is told that God would, or Jesus actually, would throw hell into the Gehenna, the fiery lake, the lake of fire. Now here's the figurative use. The disciple James used the word Gehenna. It shows that an unruly tongue is itself a world of unrighteousness, and that one's whole round of living can be affected by the words that defile the speaker's body. The tongue of such one, full of death-dealing poison and so giving evidence of a bad heart condition, can cause the user to be sentenced by God to go to the symbolic Gehenna. James 3:6 through 8, you can compare that to Mark or Matthew 12:37, Psalm in the book of Psalms, Psalm 5:9, Psalm 143, 140 verse 3, and Romans 3:13. The biblical use of Gehenna as a symbol corresponds to that of the lake of fire. In the book of Revelation at 20:14 and 15, I have one final question for the viewer here to ponder over. How can hell be thrown into itself? Remember, they translated lake of fire and Gehenna as hell. Eventually, hell, death, will be destroyed. Where will it go? It will be tossed into the lake of fire. Revelation 20:14 and 15. And it says that the lake of fire means the second death. So never tell a child, or anyone else for that matter, that he or she should go to hell or will go to hell. First of all, you don't have that power to judge. And second of all, the word hell is grave or pit. That's what it means. And don't tell anyone that their conduct would eventually send them to hell. You are wishing death on the individual. We all go to hell when we die. Jesus himself went to hell. Acts 2:27 and 31. The Bible tells us God is love personified. He simply could not engage in torture. In fact, Revelation 12:9 says that Jesus, Michael, the archangel, would cast Satan eventually into hell. Is that what the Bible says? No, it says down to the earth. He was cast down to the earth, not under the earth, not in some fiery place. You know, people depict this Satan character with horns and red face and a tail and all this pitchfork. Let me tell you something. The Bible says that at one time, Satan was the most beautiful creature. Yeah. You can look that up in Ezekiel chapter 28. So never think that this loving, understandable, forgiving God that we worship, we're supposed to worship anyways, would ever torture you or anyone else in hellfire. God is love. He is not a sadist. Anyone who thinks that there's a hell is actually thinking God created a place for torment. Therefore, he would be considered a sadist. If you go into somebody's basement and they've got a lot of whips and chains and stuff down there, they're sadists or masochists. They either like to inflict pain or they like it inflicted upon themselves. So please, dear ones, don't say that God is going to send anybody to hell. He simply doesn't do that today. That's right. God does not put people death today. Not yet. He will when he orders his son back. That's when. But if somebody dies today, don't say God took him. With evil, God cannot be tried. That would be an evil thing that God would do. No, see, God doesn't do that. So please, stop with the hellfire stuff. It's a myth. There is no place where God torments people. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you all